Well, I could offer you a crisp. Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the quick read novel The Code of the Krillitane, written by Justin Richards. This is the last quick read novella, a short novel, that stars the 10th Doctor. Despite it taking place before his final story, this story was actually released after. It was supposedly released in March of 2010. However, some people actually got their copies, some shops should I say, actually got their copies extremely early as February of that year. So that is, that's just something to note about this story. Also as well to note is that it features the Krillitane, a creature that has not appeared for us since the story School Reunion. However, they did appear in the last main BBC books of the 10th Doctor, the Krillitane Storm. So, either way you look at it, the last story that features the 10th Doctor chronologically in novel form has him battling the Krillitane, which I find really interesting. I don't know why they were so determined to get these creatures to be one of his final monsters. Now, along with every other novel in the 2009 and 2010 that dealt with the 10th Doctor's final days, this story puts him against a recurring monster, in this case, the Krillitane. However, the quick read novels already did that. Every story in the quick read range had the Doctor going up a recurring monster of the series. So it was just a coincidence at that point. So yeah, that's it. Also, this book is surprisingly rare. I was lucky to get it. I did get it when it came out, but I got it a few years after. I'd say 2014, possibly 2015, around about-ish. But I have seen copies go skyrocket up to like 3,000. So yeah. I have seen like ones that are like reasonable price, just like, you know, a £5 or something. And then you can see some people just like really scratching up the price. I don't know if they're like better quality or something, but yeah, just to know, if you got a copy of this and you need a bit of bob, you might be interested in looking at that. So anyway, the story starts off with the Doctor basically just wandering around. This is a Doctor that is a lot more casual, a lot more, he's not really like searching for danger or anything. He's just trying to enjoy life. This kind of does tie into what we are retroactively putting into the Doctor's character, where after being the Time Lord victorious and meeting his fourth incarnation in Out of Time, he's become a much more casual, laid-back incarnation, which does then lead into, which does actually lead into his TV story. Whether that was intentional or not, I doubt it, but it might even technically, from the writer's point of view, take place before Waters of Mars. However, the most official Doctor Who timeline keeper website, iSpider, puts this story just before his final adventure. So I'm putting it here. And also as well, the casualness of the Doctor here really does fit with the overarching story that we've retroactively put ourselves. So that is really fun. I always love it when we get where there was an unintentional storyline there. But anyway, the Doctor's just, he's just enjoying life. He has gotten a concern of something. His TARDIS has picked up something of a code, an alien code. But he's not, he's just come down to Earth, just basically, not to like investigate, because that's not really what kicks him off. He seems to just enjoy going around for a bit, until he sees some kids playing football, and they seem to be eating these new crisps, brainy crisps, and that the one of the kids becomes extremely intelligent. In fact, he actually explains Einstein's theory of relativity, only then for all the other kids to not only to basically prove it in front of the Doctor, but also know how to past Einstein's theory and learn how to travel faster than light, which for this time period should be impossible. The story is also definitely establishes itself in the year 2010. So in terms of the year of the Earth, this story actually takes place after the 10th Doctor's final story. So that's kind of interesting, but does kind of mean that everybody has turned into the Master at some point in this story. That's pretty funny to think about. And so the main half of the story is a very just casual, is a very just turn to go to the story, because the Doctor then goes shopping for these crisps and he investigates and he does an experiment on these crisps, and he says there's two things he learns. One, he didn't even have to open a single packet to find out the address of the firm that made the crisps, and the second one, which he kind of guessed, was that the oil that was in the crisp is Krilitane oil. So early on, the Doctor knows it's Krilitane. And here, it's strange, because in the last story, School Reunion, the Krilitane used the oil to make the kids intelligent so they can break this code, which actually sets up the building blocks of the universe. Whoever hacks this code hacks the universe. And think of it as the Infinity Gauntlet of the Doctor Who universe. They can create basically whatever they want. And you would think that if another Krilitane group were going to do the same thing, it would be for the same purpose. But no, these Krilitanes have nothing to do with this code, which is strange because the story is called Code of the Krilitane. And the last story had them having a code, and it was part of the Krilitane. So you would think that they would be in there, but no, this story doesn't actually feature them. There's a lot of casual moments, like the Doctor interacts with the shopkeeper and talks to this old lady about how prices, bargains are bad for you. In fact, there's a really funny moment where she basically points out that she doesn't have a cat, despite her buying cat food, because she saw it was on offer. I don't know why, I really like that scene. And then the majority of the story then has, well, I say the majority of the story is very short, features the Doctor having work. The Doctor goes to the Brainy Crisps factory and disguises himself, thanks to the works of the psychic paper, as a new health and workflow, secrecy and workflow manager. And so he gets his own office, he goes to meetings, which are extremely boring, but he gets sent to Henry, the computer guy, because he's having trouble. Not really having trouble, but he basically is keeping his ear to the ground and trying to learn as much about the company. And he quickly learns that there's pools and pools of money that are going to the IT department, despite the shareholders that needs to be paid, and the IT doesn't seem to be that important to the Crisps. So why is so much money being said that way? So the owner, Sir Manning Cross, he actually sends the Doctor to Henry, and at this point in the story, we are led to believe that Henry is a Krillitane with Sir Manning Cross and his secretary Stella Stark. I don't know which it's pronounced. They quickly reveal that they are Krillitanes to us, because they're like, oh yes, the Doctor will deal with it. The Doctor will be dealt with Henry. Ha 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 ha. Kind of mustache twirling villains. The big issue with this story, in my opinion, is the Krillitane. They are so dull. They do have like an interesting story around them, and what we get to like slowly learn what they're dealing with, what's their plan. But it's something you've seen 100 times before, and the Krillitanes here just don't have anything really interesting to do until the final act. So the majority of the story, they just come up as mustache twirling villains. Of course, I do understand that this is a novella, it's a shorter novel, so it can get away with having a much more silly, much more cliched character as the villain. However, the villain doesn't leave a taste in your mouth, if that makes any sense. Not that he's bad, he works well for the story, and for the story around it, they are quite interesting. But I felt like Sir Manning Cross and Stella Stark, or Stark, whatever you pronounce it, I just couldn't get into them. Whenever they appear, it was so clearly that obviously they were the bad guys, but also as well that they just weren't bringing much to the table. I don't know much about Justin Richards' work as a writer, but I felt like he was let down here, because the Krillitane are a very unique race in the Doctor Who universe, because they've been described as a race that change and adapt, and they basically take the forms from civilizations they conquer. With the first time school reunion, the Doctor has apparently met them before, however he doesn't recognise them at all because their appearances have changed so much, as well as there's also a scene in that story where the Krillitane basically explains how Krillitanes got wings, how they got this bat-like form. And though, yeah, that does kind of play into a part at the very end of the story, and it's not in the way that you would expect. Like, it seemed like the way they do it, it's like, why do they do it from the civilizations they take? Why don't they just program themselves whatever features they want? Is beyond me. So it kind of contradicts school reunion in that case. But I feel like for that concept, for that idea that school reunion doesn't kind of... The school reunion had left this door open for another Krillitane story to play a much more interesting role, to see different forms of Krillitane, different environments. And this is a novel. You are not bound by budgetary reasons. However, the main Krillitanes that we stay with, the main Krillitanes that we stick throughout the story, are the original Krillitanes from School Reunion, and the story just plays out like School Reunion. The Doctor is interested at kids that are intelligent, too intelligent for their own good. The intelligence seems to be coming from what they're eating, which is, in this case, crisps. In School Reunion, it's chips. They're even like same basic product. And the Doctor goes in as a undercover, going to work to try and figure out what's going on, and has a confrontation with the main villain, and it just feels so familiar for the majority of the story, and it just feels like Justin Richards watched School Reunion and just went, okay, that's a Krillitane story. All Krillitane stories must be in some way, shape or form like this. And I feel like, despite myself enjoying the story, I do actually enjoy the story. It's mainly the villain that I wasn't too interested in. But the fact that this story features the Krillitane, and it's just so similar and doesn't do anything groundbreaking until the very end, which I will admit is pretty interesting. Does it not really just do anything with the concept? It just does School Reunion, but now instead of chips in a school, it's crisps in Britain, with a firm in a crisp factory. So yeah, for the majority of the story, you know where this is going, you know where this has come from. The Doctor originally believes that Henry could be a Krillitane, and gets asked all of these questions by the Doctor, like all of these intelligent questions, and the Doctor tries to be like, well, maybe you are somebody who is here to distract me, or maybe you're a red herring and you're just here to take me away from the main threat, and that you are actually working with Sir Manning Cross. But the Doctor tells kind of suspect, but he tries to get Henry to come with him and try to break into Sir Manning Cross's computer, because from the rest of the systems it's deadlock sealed. Which again, that term in the 10th Doctor era just gets overused to the point where it's kind of funny. But anyway, and when they go back to Henry's office, Henry's assistant dies, and Henry tears up, he cries, he mourns the death of his assistant, and the Doctor's like, do Krillitanes cry? Maybe he's not. And there's a great moment where the Doctor, Henry at one point left the Doctor and then came back, and then they find the body, and the Doctor suspects that he could have been the Krillitane that killed this poor boy, Jeff, his trainee, his secretary, whatever he was. And then the Doctor sees Henry crying, and the Doctor's just like, he's kind of like trying to hint, but then Henry kind of gets it. It's like, oh, I get what you mean. If I came into the office when I left you, Doctor, then I could have had the chance to save this Jeff character. And the Doctor is like, yes, that's what I meant to say, in a sad home. He also asks Henry does he wear a earring? To which Henry says no. It's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And so they basically learn that there's going to be this meeting at this hotel, and so they go to the hotel early, and they set up some traps, and they hide as the Krillitane basically reveal themselves to the shareholders and plan to just kill everybody, get rid of the evidence, as their plans have come into fruition. And it turns out that they're using the website for the Brainy Crisps, because the crisps basically link you to, they have this URL, which if you go onto the site and you can take this questionnaire, it will then basically the questions and the person get interlined, so it becomes a kind of program, and the Krillitane are using this program to try to create life. And this is where I was talking about. The creations in the Krillitane are done by computer. Basically, they get people to program into new Krillitanes, new forms, and because of that, this story could have had any other villain, because it's the Krillitanes. They kind of take what they like from the species they conquer, but here it kind of clearly establishes that they don't need to do that. That they're clones of a sort, and that they program themselves with these new features, these new forms. Though they do call these new Krillitanes the Super Krillitanes, the story kind of gives that's the only explanation this story gives us. I don't know if the Krilitane Storm gives us another way of how they adapt and form into their forms. However, because this is the only explanation in this story, that does kind of seem it, and they could have just been a clone race of something. They could have been, Sontarans, a race of Super Sontarans. But I guess it was a mandate that the Krillitanes be involved in this story in some way, shape or form. And then the Doctor basically comes out, saves everybody by causing havoc as he makes the trap so that all these crisps, because if you remember from School Reunion, the Krillitane have adapted so much that their own oil has become poisonous to them. And so the Doctor has set up so that all these crisps fall upon them in this hotel, and they start burning, with a lot of them exploding, with only a handful of Krillitane left. And the Doctor realises that there's this one character, Gabby, who's appeared throughout the story prior to this point. She seems to be like the Doctor's assistant. She was asked to be like the Doctor's little helper. However, the Doctor realises that she's missing an earring, and then the Doctor reveals that Jeff was actually holding a earring when he died, revealing that Gabby is a Krillitane. And so the Doctor and Henry escape, and Henry kind of becomes this companion, and despite he doesn't really have much of a character, much of a personality, he's mainly used as the red herring from the first time we see him. And so when that is revealed, there's not really much for him to do as a character, but he's sweet, he's kind. All of this just kind of goes way over his head, and he's kind of your basic companion, one-off companion, with the whole asking questions and just majority of his time just being really confused. I do actually seem to really enjoy the character, and I do like it was revealed that he was just a human being, and though the Doctor has been suspicious throughout most of the story ends with Henry revealing that he is a good guy. So the Doctor and Henry go to the crisps factory, the main factory where they actually make the crisps, because Henry realises that there is a secret room there, which they presumed was just like chemicals for like what they make the ingredients from. However, now realising that there are actually alien entities from space, does he click that could be a great place to hide something. So the Doctor goes there and they find these tanks, 3 giant tanks, which are basically these birthing pods, and the Krillitane arrive there, but the Doctor and Henry basically get to a computer first, and so but the Krillitane catch them and to let them live for a bit, as they can be the first victims of this new Super Krillitane, to which they come out, and we finally get some new versions, new forms of the Krillitane. However, they do specify that these are Super Krillitanes, and I love this scene. I absolutely adore it. These new Krillitanes are much taller, and they're red, and they've got, instead of these stony faces, which they're not like those, they're described as almost human baby faces with horns. So they got this like devil appearance because they're also like red. And one of the cliffhangers for one of the chapters is that it's going up to the Doctor, giving its claw. And then in the next chapter, the Doctor just gives a handshake, and it turns out that these super Krillitanes are really goddamn polite. I don't know why. I love that idea. And the Doctor has basically got Henry to reprogram the Krillitanes to basically be these new kind of races. Oh, that could be a reason why I like Henry so much. There is a part in the story where the Krillitanes seem to underestimate him. At one point, one of the Krillitanes, back at the hotel, one of the Krillitanes basically explains to the Doctor that the reason they hired Henry is because he was so useless, he was so bad at his job, that he was an easy scapegoat, an easy person to basically put all the blame to. As if anybody needed an issue, if anyone had a problem, anyone had any suspicion, they would go to Henry, to which they will get literally no answers. And the fact that he wasn't a part of the Krillitane, then he physically cannot reveal any secrets of the Krillitane. So that, and Henry is kind of like bummed out by this. It's like the only reason he was involved in this story at all is because he's useless. But the Doctor is like, no, Henry is not useless. He is much more important than you give him credit for. Just you wait. And so Henry's the one who programs these new super Krillitanes to become a much more nicer creatures. That is brilliant. I love that idea, which makes this ending feel so satisfying. It's essentially like, do you know in the next Doctor where we have the surrogate companion basically having his own little story arc and storyline? It's like that, only here this surrogate companion actually gets to fulfill his character arc, and by the end of the story he proves himself to the Krillitanes that he is a worthy individual. And so there's this massive battle in the factory where all the oil starts pouring out, killing both the Krillitanes and sadly the new super Krillitanes, as the Doctor is like, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. And the Krillitane basically tells them to run, but not from them, not from the Krillitanes, but from the explosion of the oil just gonna be oozing out as the new super Krillitane basically slashes out something, pouring the oil on everybody on there, basically making all the Krillitanes explode. And the factory goes up in flames, and the Crisps get deported as there are health and safety violations. I can't remember if UNIT was involved in that, but they could have been. The Doctor is very clearly part of it. And then the story ends with Henry basically is like, oh, those shareholders, they'll need some new people. They'll need more jobs, and the fact that I saved their lives might be a great way to start. He does actually ask at one point, can he travel with the Doctor? Does he have a job vacancy? And the Doctor's like, I do, but I'm not planning on filling it out at the moment. So it's at this point, the Doctor he's open to the possibility of having a companion again. However, he's just not interested at the moment. He's given it a little bit of time, which makes a lot of difference from previous stories like Planet of the Dead and Water of the Mars, where he's just like, no. He's full out no. I'm not having a companion again. And also that does tie in with Out of Time, where the 4th Doctor basically tells the 10th Doctor, after learning that he stopped travelling with companions, that stop being so doom and gloom. Just enjoy life as impossible. So it's basically the 10th Doctor opening up here and is like, okay, maybe there's a chance that I could become back to my normal self again. And that is Code of the Krillitane. Overall, it is a pretty decent story. The villains aren't that interesting in terms of characters. However, the story around them is really interesting, despite it mostly being a rehash of ideas from School Reunion. The Doctor's very fun here, and Henry is a likeable one-off, if a bit simple, companion. So I doubt you're going to get too much enjoyment out of this, but it was a great fun, and for a small novel, if you're somebody who is struggling reading, or if you're a excellent reader and you just want just a little adventure, just something to pass the time, this is actually a great story to I recommend. So that's Code of the Krillitane. So join me next time where the Doctor must face the four Knocks as they are returning. The Master has returned and the end of time has happened. So join me next time for the 10th Doctor's final outing. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra.